The Knights Templar, an ancient order forged in the crucible of the Crusades, their story entwined with both sacred duty and scandalous secrets. For centuries, they have been the subject of fascination, their rise to power and eventual dramatic fall having captivated the imaginations of historians, conspiracy theorists, and secret society enthusiasts alike. The public face of the Templars, with their gallant knights in shining armor, their coded rituals, and their revered place within the Catholic Church, has been imprinted in the annals of history. Yet, behind this mythic image lies an even greater mystery, a mystery that involves the forgotten women who were not only integral to the Templar legacy, but also played a role so hidden, it has been almost entirely erased by history. History often paints a clear picture of the Templars, their knightly warriors, and their sacred mission to protect the holy places of Christianity. We know of their involvement in the Crusades, their supposed discovery of ancient relics, and their vast wealth, which ultimately led to their downfall when they were accused of heresy by the French king Philip IV. However, there is one dimension of the Templar story that is often overlooked, dismissed, or altogether ignored: the role of women within the order. While the history books may focus on the knights, the strategists, and the men who wielded swords and shields, the question remains: where were the women, and why do they remain so invisible in the official narratives? As we delve into the shadowy world of the Templars, we find traces of a hidden truth that has largely gone unnoticed. The women of the Templar Order are not mere footnotes. They are not insignificant players who merely existed on the periphery of the great Templar Empire. In fact, some researchers and historians suggest that women may have played a far more central role than previously imagined, possibly even influencing the very secrets and rituals that the Templars kept closely guarded. But the question remains: why were these women, their roles, their stories, and their contributions systematically erased from the public eye? What truths are buried beneath the layers of time, suppressed by those who sought to maintain a patriarchal grip on history? Imagine, for a moment, a time long ago when the Templars were more than just a group of warrior monks. Picture a society that functioned with both masculine and feminine energies at play. An order where the power of women was either veiled in secrecy or cast aside completely by the forces that sought to control the narrative of history. For centuries, the stories of these women have been obscured by the very forces that fear the implications of their existence. What were these women doing in the Templar ranks? Were they simply the wives, daughters, and sisters of the knights? Or did they hold positions of authority, influence, and esoteric knowledge that could have been pivotal in the Templars' rituals, their mystical pursuits, and their search for the Holy Grail? It's a tantalizing thought, one that challenges the traditional narrative and beckons us to look deeper into the forgotten corners of history. The concept of women in secret societies and clandestine orders is not a new one. Throughout history, there have been countless accounts of women who wielded hidden power, whose influence extended far beyond the limits imposed on them by society. In the world of the Templars, it is plausible to think that such women existed, perhaps not as warriors, but as powerful spiritual guides, healers, or even keepers of the very secrets the Templars sought to protect. These women may have been the guardians of forbidden knowledge, the keepers of arcane rituals, or the ones who preserved the ancient teachings that have survived through the centuries. Yet, despite these possibilities, mainstream history has been slow to acknowledge these hidden figures. Many scholars dismiss the idea of female participation in such a masculine-dominated institution as implausible. And yet, this dismissive attitude begs the question: what are they afraid of? Could it be that the truth about the role of women in the Templar Order is so revolutionary, so powerful, that its revelation would disrupt not only the established historical narrative, but also the very way we understand power, religion, and gender roles in history? What makes this mystery even more intriguing is the connection between the Templars and the sacred feminine. The Templars are often associated with the Holy Grail, an object of myth, legend, and mystery. For centuries, the Grail has been depicted as a symbol of purity, divine wisdom, and spiritual enlightenment, yet few question the fact that it is often represented in a male-dominated context. But what if the Grail, in its truest form, was not a symbol of masculine power, but of something far older, something tied to the feminine divine, the mysterious feminine force that has been largely suppressed throughout history? Could the Grail, in some versions of the myth, be a metaphor for the lost feminine wisdom that the Templars sought to protect? Could the women of the Templars have been the true custodians of this knowledge? For centuries, the women involved in the Templar order, if they existed at all, have remained in the shadows. These women, if they were part of the order, would have had to navigate the delicate balance between their roles as protectors of sacred knowledge and their subjugation within the confines of a patriarchal society. Their stories were erased, their voices silenced, their contributions ignored. But now, as we begin to peel back the layers of history, new questions arise, questions that challenge our understanding of the Templars and, more importantly, challenge the very structure of historical power. Were the Templars simply male warriors, or were they a more complex and nuanced organization that relied on the hidden strength of both men and women? What secrets have been lost over the centuries? Secrets that could reveal a new understanding of the Templars, their purpose, and their connection to the sacred feminine. In the end, we are left with a tantalizing possibility that the women of the Templars were not just a footnote to history, but central players in the narrative, a narrative that, until now, has been carefully guarded and deliberately obscured. In this documentary, we will journey into the forgotten corners of history to explore the hidden truths about the women who may have been integral to the Templar order. We will uncover the secrets that were buried with them, examine the esoteric mysteries they may have guarded, and challenge the history that has been told for centuries. The story of the Templars is far from complete, and the missing chapter, the one about the forgotten women, may just be the key to understanding the full scope of their legacy. Join us as we dive deep into this captivating mystery, where history, legend, and forgotten truths converge. To understand the role of the forgotten women within the Knights Templar, we must first delve into the history of the order itself. The Templars were not born in the quiet recesses of medieval society, but rather in the violent, chaotic maelstrom of the Crusades, an era when Europe was in the midst of religious fervor and territorial conquest. The order was formed in 1119, in the aftermath of the First Crusade, by a group of knights led by Hugues de Payens. Their mission was simple in its premise: to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, specifically to Jerusalem, which had been captured from Muslim rule in 1099. But, as is often the case with secretive and powerful organizations, what started as a noble cause would soon evolve into something much more complex, enigmatic, and far-reaching. Initially, the Templars operated out of a small building on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, from which their name was derived. The Temple Mount was not just a religious site, but also a place of ancient mystery, believed by many to be the location of King Solomon's temple, an area rich with symbolism, esoteric significance, and countless legends. This connection to a place steeped in both biblical and mystical lore would prove pivotal to the Templars' rise. While they were ostensibly a group of monks sworn to chastity, poverty, and obedience, their roles soon expanded beyond that of mere protectors of pilgrims. With the wealth and power that came from their noble benefactors, the Templars quickly transformed from humble guardians to military strategists, financiers, and political power brokers. The Templars' rise to power was not merely the result of their military prowess, although their combat skills were legendary. In fact, they became an elite military force, renowned for their discipline, dedication, and their unique fighting style. The Templars were among the first to develop tactics that would later become standard in medieval warfare, including the famous Templar charge, where knights would fight in close formation, protecting one another with their shields while advancing. Their success on the battlefield was instrumental in establishing their reputation. Soon, they were seen not only as defenders of the faith, but also as the guardians of Christian power in the Holy Land. However, it wasn't just their military success that elevated the Templars. In the aftermath of the Crusades, they became embroiled in a complex web of politics and finance. With vast lands granted to them by European monarchs, they built castles, fortresses, and estates across Europe and the Middle East. These holdings gave them control over important trade routes, making them extremely wealthy. The Templars also developed an early form of banking system that allowed pilgrims to deposit money in one location and withdraw it in another, effectively pioneering the modern concept of financial institutions. Their wealth, however, brought them into conflict with some of the most powerful figures of the time. As they grew in power and influence, the Templars became a formidable force in European politics, frequently negotiating with kings, popes, and other leaders. Their relationship with the Catholic Church was particularly significant. Initially, the order was placed directly under the protection of the Pope, which meant that the Templars were not subject to the laws of any kingdom or secular authority. This unique status allowed them a great deal of autonomy, but it also aroused suspicion and jealousy among European rulers. Over time, the Templars became a law unto themselves, operating as a transnational organization with vast resources and a complex hierarchy. The order's success, both militarily and financially, allowed them to amass great influence, and they played a central role in the geopolitics of the medieval world. However, their very power made them vulnerable. Their wealth and political influence brought them into direct opposition with those who sought to control the European throne and religious establishment. As their network of influence grew, so too did the resentment of those who saw the Templars as a threat to their own power. While the Templars' military prowess and political maneuvering are often at the forefront of discussions about the order, what is often overlooked is the deeper, more mysterious aspect of their rise to power. The Templars were not just soldiers and bankers. They were also deeply connected to esoteric traditions, secret knowledge, and religious mysteries that have been lost to history. The order's connection to the Holy Grail, for example, has been the subject of speculation for centuries. Was it merely a legend, or did the Templars actually possess knowledge or artifacts tied to the Grail's ancient, mysterious past? Could this hidden knowledge have been the true source of their power? And if so, did women play a role in guarding the secret? The notion of hidden knowledge is crucial to understanding the Templars' ascent. From the very beginning, the order was rumored to have access to ancient wisdom, possibly tied to the mysteries of the Temple Mount itself. As they delved deeper into the Holy Land, the Templars became exposed to ancient traditions, relics, and texts that connected them to lost civilizations and esoteric philosophies. Many have speculated that the Templars uncovered powerful spiritual or mystical teachings during their time in the Holy Land, teachings that may have included knowledge of the ancient rites of the goddess, sacred geometry, and alchemical wisdom that could have been preserved by women as much as by men. This connection between power, mysticism, and the divine feminine is often overlooked when we look at the Templars' rise. The masculine figures of the Templar order dominate the historical narrative, but it is essential to consider the possibility that the Templars' secrets, whether they be the Grail or other hidden truths, were not solely guarded by men. Could it be that women played a pivotal role in preserving this knowledge, as keepers of sacred rituals or esoteric wisdom? Were they the true spiritual guides of the order, hidden from history's gaze? The rise of the Templars, after all, was not just the rise of a military order. It was also the rise of a secret, powerful network that could have included women whose roles were deliberately obscured. As we begin to explore this hidden dimension of the Templars' rise to power, it becomes clear that their influence was not confined to the battlefield or the political arena alone. Their story is interwoven with religious mysteries, sacred knowledge, and spiritual truths that have been suppressed for centuries. The Templars were not just a military order. They were, in many ways, keepers of an ancient and mystical heritage, one that may have been guarded not only by the men of the order, but by the women who stood in the shadows, protecting the secrets of the past. Understanding the rise of the Templars requires us to look beyond the familiar narrative, the one that focuses solely on their military achievements, their wealth, and their eventual downfall. To truly understand their significance, we must consider the possibility that the Templars' power was not only derived from their external achievements, but from the hidden knowledge they possessed, knowledge that may have been entrusted to both men and women. The Templars' true legacy, then, is not just one of gold and glory, but of a deeper, more mystical understanding that transcends the boundaries of history, gender, and time. And so, as we venture deeper into the enigma of the Templars' rise, we begin to see the shadow of the forgotten women who may have played a pivotal role in shaping their destiny. The question we must ask is not only how the Templars rose to power, but also who helped them maintain their hold on that power, and who, within their ranks, may have been the true keepers of the Order's most sacred secrets. To fully comprehend the potential hidden roles of women within the Knights Templar, we must first explore the broader context of secret societies, the esoteric traditions that influenced their formation, and the significant, but often overlooked, role women played in these mystical and covert organizations. Throughout history, secret societies have been conduits for hidden knowledge, power, and influence. These societies were often exclusive, with their members bound by oaths of secrecy, sworn to protect their mysteries and preserve their ancient wisdom. While many of these societies have been male-dominated, there is an undercurrent of feminine power that has persisted in the shadows, power that has been deliberately obscured or suppressed by history. The term secret society conjures images of shadowy figures cloaked in mystery, gathering in hidden chambers to discuss forbidden knowledge. Most often, these societies have been viewed through the lens of male dominance. Organizations like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati are typically associated with male figures, secret rituals, and arcane symbols. Yet, when we look closer at the esoteric traditions that shaped these groups, we find that many of these societies were deeply influenced by ancient beliefs in the sacred feminine. The divine feminine has always been a central element in mystical traditions, representing an essential, though often marginalized, force within the spiritual and occult realms. This connection to the feminine is not just an abstract concept. It is deeply rooted in the rituals, teachings, and hidden knowledge of many secret societies, groups to which the Templars were undoubtedly connected. When we consider the historical period in which the Knights Templar rose to prominence, it becomes apparent that they were not operating in a vacuum. The medieval world was rife with mystical, occult traditions, many of which were centered around the worship of feminine deities, the veneration of the Virgin Mary, and the belief in the power of the goddess. The Templars themselves were not only warrior monks, but also deeply spiritual men who sought knowledge and wisdom from various mystical traditions. They were inextricably linked to the broader currents of esotericism that flowed through Europe at the time. These currents, however, were not only masculine in nature, but were often balanced by female-oriented spiritual practices. One of the key elements in understanding the role of women within the Templars is recognizing the long-standing connection between women and the mystical traditions of Europe. From the ancient world, through the rise of Christianity, to the medieval period, women have been the stewards of sacred knowledge, hidden in plain sight or buried beneath layers of male-dominated institutions. The role of women in ancient religions, such as those of Egypt, Greece, and Rome, often involved the worship of powerful goddesses who were seen as the embodiments of wisdom, fertility, and creation. These traditions did not disappear with the advent of Christianity. Rather, they were absorbed, reinterpreted, and sometimes hidden. In the Christian tradition, the feminine was not entirely erased, it was transformed. The figure of the Virgin Mary, for instance, became a central symbol of divine femininity, purity, and grace, but she was often stripped of her more assertive, transformative aspects that were once associated with the ancient goddesses. The influence of these ancient feminine traditions did not fade away completely. During the rise of the Templars, many of the men who joined the order were likely familiar with the esoteric traditions that venerated the feminine. It is plausible that some of them were influenced by the cults of Isis, Diana, or other goddesses, whose symbols and rituals could have been interwoven with the mystical practices of the Templars. This connection to ancient feminine wisdom may have been passed down through oral tradition, through hidden teachings, or through more obscure spiritual practices that were shared in secret. But, as we know from history, these practices were often concealed from the public eye and suppressed by the patriarchal structures that sought to maintain control over spiritual and political power. The Templars themselves may have incorporated these teachings into their rituals and beliefs, even if their official doctrine was grounded in Christian dogma. It is also important to note that the Templars were not the only secret society of their time. In fact, many of the great secret societies of history, including the Rosicrucians and later Freemasons, were steeped in the language and symbolism of the sacred feminine. These groups often claimed to have access to ancient knowledge that was thought to have been passed down from the lost civilizations of Atlantis or Egypt. Some of this knowledge, it seems, was hidden for a reason, because it represented a challenge to the patriarchal, male-dominated structures that governed both the church and the political world. In many of these societies, women were involved in secret rituals and teachings, but their roles were often hidden, suppressed, or relegated to secondary positions. In some cases, women were permitted to participate in the inner circles of these societies, but their involvement was veiled in mystery. The question arises, why were women so often relegated to the shadows in these esoteric orders, even if they played a crucial role in guarding the secrets of the past? The answer lies in the historical context of gender and power. As Christianity gained dominance in Europe, the role of women in religious and spiritual matters was increasingly marginalized. The church and political rulers, threatened by the potential power of the feminine, sought to silence or suppress women who held knowledge that could disrupt the status quo. This suppression of the feminine is not limited to the Templars, but is a recurring theme in the history of secret societies and esoteric traditions. Despite this marginalization, there are many historical records and accounts that suggest women played key roles in the preservation of occult knowledge and the continuation of mystical practices. Some historians and researchers believe that women were responsible for safeguarding the true teachings of the Templars, particularly those related to the Grail and the sacred mysteries of the ancient world. It is even speculated that certain women, whether they were wives, daughters, or sisters of the Templar Knights, may have been entrusted with guarding important secrets, such as sacred texts or relics, that were too dangerous for men to hold openly. These women, though often forgotten by history, may have been the true keepers of the Templars' most powerful secrets. The idea that women played a hidden yet powerful role in secret societies is not confined to the past. Modern secret societies, such as the Freemasons, also have a complicated relationship with the feminine. In some Masonic traditions, women have been allowed to join certain orders, but their roles are often symbolic or ceremonial, with limited access to the deeper, more mystical knowledge that is often reserved for men. In these contexts, women are sometimes seen as bearers of wisdom or spiritual power, but they are rarely allowed to hold positions of leadership or influence within the highest echelons of the society. This reflects the ongoing struggle for recognition of the feminine within esoteric and secretive traditions, a struggle that has persisted for centuries. The history of secret societies is rich with tales of hidden women, powerful female figures whose roles were concealed or erased to maintain the control of the patriarchal systems of their time. These women, often seen as protectors of sacred knowledge, played a crucial role in shaping the course of history, even if their stories were not told. The Knights Templar, as one of the most enigmatic and influential secret societies of the medieval period, may have been no different. While the male knights fought on the front lines, it is entirely possible that women were working behind the scenes, preserving the Templars' most sacred mysteries and ensuring that their knowledge survived to be passed down through the ages. As we explore the role of women in the Templar Order, we must remember that history is often written by the victors, and the victors are rarely those who represent the feminine aspect of power. The Templars, with their connections to the sacred feminine, their esoteric knowledge, and their secretive rituals, offer a glimpse into a world where women may have held far more influence than we have been led to believe. The women in the shadows of these secret societies were not passive figures. but active participants in a spiritual tradition that spanned the ages. It is time for their stories to be told, to shine a light on the forgotten women who may have held the keys to some of history's greatest secrets. To understand the potential significance of women within the Knights Templar, it is essential to first consider the broader context of women's roles in medieval Europe. The Middle Ages were a time of strict social hierarchies, rigid gender roles, and the dominance of religious dogma. In such a society, women were largely confined to domestic spheres, subject to the authority of male relatives, and their public roles were severely limited. However, this surface-level narrative hides a much more complex and nuanced reality, one where women, though often hidden from the mainstream historical record, wielded influence in ways that transcended the restrictions imposed upon them. In medieval Europe, the Church played a central role in shaping social norms, and it had a profound impact on how women were viewed and treated. Christianity, in its dominant form, portrayed women as either idealized figures of virtue or as fallen beings in need of redemption. The Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, was held up as the pinnacle of female purity and piety, an archetype that women were encouraged to emulate. Yet, while Mary was revered, the concept of a female figure possessing earthly power or independence was largely absent. Women were often seen as the weaker sex, both physically and morally, and their role in public life was largely relegated to that of wife and mother. They were considered the bearers of children, the keepers of the home, and the nurturers of the family, with little space in the male-dominated political, military, or religious arenas. However, despite these constraints, medieval society was not entirely devoid of spaces where women could exercise power, albeit in more subtle or clandestine ways. Religious institutions, for instance, provided some women with opportunities to exert influence. Nuns, for example, were often able to wield authority within their monasteries and convents, and some women rose to prominence as abbesses, leaders of religious communities with considerable influence over the spiritual and even political affairs of their regions. The fact that these women were respected within their religious communities suggests that medieval society, while predominantly patriarchal, did allow for certain exceptions when it came to women of high rank, education, or spiritual insight. While the cloistered life of nuns and abbesses provided a limited path for female autonomy, other women were able to exert influence through their relationships with powerful men. Royal women, in particular, held significant sway, although this influence was often indirect and mediated through their marriages. Queens, for example, could command considerable political power, especially if they were the daughters of powerful families or the wives of kings. In many cases, these women acted as regents when their husbands were away or unable to rule, and some even governed in their own right. Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most famous queens of the medieval period, is a prime example of a woman who wielded political influence. She not only ruled as queen consort of France and England, but also played a key role in the cultural and intellectual life of the court, promoting the ideals of courtly love and chivalric honor that were so central to the knight's code of conduct. Yet, for most women in medieval Europe, their roles were confined to more domestic and private spheres. The idea of a woman participating directly in the military, politics, or religious leadership was largely unthinkable, and it was rare for women to hold public positions of power. But this does not mean that women were completely excluded from all forms of influence. Women, particularly those in the higher echelons of society, were often patrons of the arts, religion, and learning. They commissioned works of art, funded the construction of churches, and acted as influential figures behind the scenes, though their contributions were often downplayed or ignored by historians. Another important aspect of women's roles in medieval Europe was their connection to the mystical and occult traditions that permeated the period. While official religious doctrine was male-dominated, medieval society was still steeped in ancient beliefs and practices that were often rooted in feminine symbolism. The veneration of the Virgin Mary, as previously mentioned, was one example of the divine feminine being central to religious thought, but there were also other, more esoteric practices that involved the feminine. Women were often healers, midwives, and herbalists, roles that place them in close contact with nature and with ancient knowledge passed down through generations. These women were sometimes accused of witchcraft, and many were persecuted by the Inquisition, but they were also key figures in maintaining the continuity of certain mystical traditions. There were also underground networks of women who participated in secret religious or esoteric practices, often in opposition to the strictures of the Church. Some scholars suggest that these women may have been involved in the preservation of ancient knowledge, possibly related to the lost wisdom of pre-Christian religious systems or the Gnostic traditions that emphasized direct spiritual experience over institutional authority. These hidden groups of women, whether in the form of heretical sects, mystical societies, or secretive gatherings, were part of a larger tradition of feminine power that was often repressed but never completely eradicated. This subterranean influence suggests that even in a period of intense patriarchal control, women continued to play a role in guarding esoteric wisdom that may have been linked to the Templars and other secret societies. It is within this historical context of restricted but persistent female power that the role of women in the Templar order becomes especially intriguing. While the Templars were undoubtedly a male-dominated organization, their connection to esoteric traditions, their wealth and political power, and their access to ancient religious knowledge could have provided a unique environment for women to participate in ways that went beyond the conventional norms of the time. Given that the Templars were not only warriors but also mystics, scholars, and financiers, it is entirely possible that women were involved in more subtle, behind-the-scenes ways, whether as spiritual guides, keepers of sacred knowledge, or even participants in their secret rituals. This context also helps explain why the role of women within the Templars was not widely recognized or recorded. In an age when women's contributions were often overlooked or deliberately suppressed, the very idea of women being involved in the Templar order may have been seen as too dangerous, too revolutionary, or simply too disruptive to the established order. It is possible that the Templars themselves, recognizing the delicate nature of their esoteric pursuits, kept the involvement of women hidden, even from the public eye. This secretive nature, combined with the broader social context that marginalized women, makes it likely that any significant involvement of women within the order was deliberately suppressed. The question, then, is not whether women were involved in the Templar order, but how their involvement might have been shaped by the cultural, social, and religious structures of the time. Could women have been integral to the Templars' spiritual and mystical pursuits? Were they the true guardians of the secrets that the Templars held, their influence carefully obscured by the male-dominated narrative of history? The answer may lie in the very silence that surrounds the role of women in the medieval world, a silence that, in its own way, may hold the key to unlocking one of the most enduring mysteries of the Templar legacy. As we venture deeper into the enigmatic world of the Knights Templar, one of the most intriguing and underexplored aspects of their history is the presence of women within their ranks, particularly those known as the Templar daughters. While the Templars are widely recognized for their military prowess, their vast wealth, and their supposed connection to esoteric mysteries, the role of women in their order has often been overlooked or dismissed. Yet if we strip away the layers of official history, we find that the Templar daughters may have held far more significance than previously imagined, both in their time and in the context of the order's broader, more mystical pursuits. The term Templar daughters is not widely recognized in mainstream historical accounts, yet it has surfaced in various esoteric circles and alternative histories, where it is suggested that these women may have played a crucial role in the spiritual, mystical, and political affairs of the Templar order. The idea of Templar daughters challenges the conventional narrative of the order as an exclusively male institution. Most historians, even those who acknowledge the secrecy and mysticism surrounding the Templars, have largely dismissed the idea that women held any significant or official roles within the order. However, there are compelling reasons to reconsider this assumption. To begin with, the Templars themselves were not simply a military order. They were also a spiritual and esoteric society, one deeply rooted in the mysteries of the Holy Land and the ancient traditions of the Mediterranean world. From the very beginning, The Templars were rumored to possess knowledge that was not just military or financial in nature, but deeply mystical and hidden. This knowledge was thought to be connected to ancient relics, the secrets of the Temple of Solomon, and even the Holy Grail. Could the Templar daughters, if they existed, have been key figures in guarding and preserving these esoteric teachings? If we accept that the Templars were involved in the pursuit of hidden knowledge, it seems plausible that women could have played a role in maintaining and passing down the secret lore. The idea of the Templar daughters also opens the door to a more complex understanding of the relationship between the Templars and the sacred feminine. The Templars are most often associated with their male knights, whose duty was to protect Christian pilgrims and the holy sites of Jerusalem. Yet, much of the mystique surrounding the Templars revolves around their supposed connection to the Holy Grail, a symbol often associated with the divine feminine. In many interpretations of the Grail legend, the Grail is not simply a chalice or cup, but a sacred vessel that contains the knowledge of the feminine divine. The Templars' connection to the Grail, then, could suggest that they were not only protectors of the masculine faith, but also of a deeper, more esoteric feminine power, one that was hidden, even from the public eye. Could the Templar daughters have been the true guardians of this feminine wisdom, the ones who held the key to the Order's most secret knowledge? The idea that women could be the keepers of such a powerful and hidden truth is not without precedent in history. In many ancient traditions, women were often seen as the guardians of sacred knowledge, whether it was the wisdom of the goddess, the mysteries of the cosmos, or the teachings of the ancients. The Templar daughters may have been part of a long tradition of women who were entrusted with knowledge that could not be freely shared with the wider world, knowledge that was too dangerous, too revolutionary, or too sacred for the male-dominated society of the time. There is also the possibility that the Templar daughters were involved in a more covert capacity, working behind the scenes to preserve and protect the Templar secrets. As the Order grew in power and influence, it would have attracted the attention of many enemies, including the Catholic Church, monarchs, and rival religious factions. The Templars were eventually accused of heresy and disbanded in the early 14th century, but the truth behind their downfall remains a subject of debate. Could the Templar daughters have been involved in secretive activities, acts of preservation, encryption, or even sabotage that helped protect the Order's legacy? Were they the ones who ensured that the Templars' most valuable artifacts, such as sacred texts or relics, did not fall into the wrong hands? Interestingly, some historical records suggest that women were indeed involved in the early days of the Templar Order, albeit in less visible ways. While the Templars were officially a male-only order, the possibility remains that women were connected to the Templars through family ties, inheritance, or spiritual relationships. In fact, some researchers believe that the early Templars may have been influenced by the traditions of the Cathars, a heretical Christian sect that venerated the divine feminine and allowed women to hold significant spiritual authority. The Cathars believed that the divine was both masculine and feminine, and their spiritual practices included the participation of women in leadership roles. If the Templars were influenced by these teachings, it is possible that women, whether as daughters, wives, or spiritual companions, could have had a much more integral role in the Order than is widely accepted. Another possibility is that the Templar daughters may have been involved in a more ceremonial capacity, participating in rituals that were kept hidden from the public eye. The Templars were known for their secretive nature, and many of their rituals were thought to involve sacred symbols, alchemical processes, and even mystical practices drawn from ancient traditions. If women were involved in these rituals, it would not have been unusual for them to be kept in the shadows, their roles concealed in order to protect the secrecy of the Order. The Templar daughters could have served as priestesses, initiates, or guides in these sacred ceremonies, acting as intermediaries between the male knights and the hidden knowledge that they sought to protect. The idea of the Templar daughters is further supported by the fact that the Templars had a complex network of support, both within and outside of their order. They were not only a military force, but also a network of wealthy and powerful individuals, many of whom were connected by family ties. This would have included women, who might have been part of the social and economic fabric that supported the Templars' operations. These women, whether as wives, daughters, or sisters, may have played key roles in managing the estates, finances, and political alliances that allowed the Templars to thrive. Their influence, though not always acknowledged in official records, may have been crucial to the success of the order. Moreover, the existence of the Templar daughters would have been consistent with the broader cultural and social context of medieval Europe. While women's roles were largely confined to the domestic sphere, there were instances where women were able to wield significant power and influence, especially in religious and spiritual matters. In many cases, women acted as the hidden architects of their family's success, guiding the spiritual and moral direction of their communities. The Templars, as an organization that valued secrecy and esoteric knowledge, may have had women operating in similar, less visible roles, ensuring that the order's legacy was preserved for future generations. In the end, the mystery of the Templar daughters is a tantalizing one, filled with unanswered questions and possibilities. While mainstream history has largely ignored their presence within the Templar order, there are compelling reasons to believe that these women were far more than passive figures. They may have been the true custodians of the Templar legacy, the keepers of sacred knowledge, and the ones who ensured that the secrets of the order were passed down through the ages. The Templar daughters, whether as spiritual guides, protectors of hidden relics, or active participants in the mystical practices of the order, remain one of history's greatest untold stories. A story that, if uncovered, could change the way we understand the Knights Templar and their connection to the sacred feminine. To understand the profound mysteries surrounding the Knights Templar, it is essential to explore the hidden, mystical aspects of the order, elements that have long been veiled in secrecy and mystery. While the Templars are best known for their military prowess during the Crusades and their subsequent downfall at the hands of King Philip IV of France, there is another, far more enigmatic side to their legacy, one that speaks of ancient knowledge, sacred symbols, and a deep connection to esoteric traditions that have often been dismissed or ignored by mainstream history. The mystical elements of the Templar order are not just rumors or fanciful tales. They're deeply ingrained in the order's foundation and operations, and they may hold the key to understanding the true purpose of the Templars and the potential role that women played in their spiritual pursuits. The Templars' connection to mysticism is often overshadowed by the more conventional narratives about their role in the Crusades, their wealth, and their alleged heresy. Yet, at the heart of the Templar order was a profound spiritual and mystical dimension that set them apart from other knightly orders. While outwardly they were Christian knights, sworn to defend the Holy Land and protect pilgrims, the Templars also sought to uncover deeper truths about the nature of the divine, the cosmos, and the hidden wisdom of the ancient world. This esoteric search for knowledge was not just an intellectual pursuit. It was a spiritual quest that involved rituals, symbols, and teachings passed down through secretive channels. At the core of Templar mysticism was a belief in the importance of sacred geometry, alchemy, and hidden religious symbols. These elements were not mere abstractions, but powerful tools for understanding the divine order of the universe. The Templars, it seems, were not just warriors. They were also students of the ancient mysteries, much like the priests and scholars of old, who sought to unravel the cosmic code of creation. They were deeply connected to the ancient traditions of Egypt, Greece, and even the mysticism of the early Christian Gnostics. These traditions, which emphasized the hidden nature of spiritual truth and the use of symbols and rituals to access higher realms of consciousness, were a cornerstone of Templar belief and practice. The Holy Grail is perhaps the most famous symbol associated with the Templars, and it represents one of the most enduring mysteries of the order. However, the Grail was not merely a legendary artifact. It was a symbol of divine wisdom and spiritual enlightenment, often connected to the sacred feminine. Many scholars and historians argue that the Grail represents a hidden knowledge, one that transcends the traditional religious understanding of time. This knowledge was said to be concealed from the masses, accessible only to those who had the right spiritual awareness to perceive it. The Templars' connection to the Grail has been a subject of much speculation, with some suggesting that they did not simply protect the Grail, but that they may have possessed knowledge about its true nature, one that was linked to ancient, feminine wisdom. This wisdom may have been passed down through esoteric channels, guarded and preserved by women who were considered the true custodians of this sacred knowledge. The Templars' search for hidden wisdom was not confined to religious symbols and objects. Their connection to alchemy is another crucial aspect of their mystical practices. Alchemy, the ancient art of transformation, was central to many secret societies during the medieval period, and it played an important role in the Templars' spiritual journey. Alchemists believed that the transmutation of base metals into gold was a metaphor for the purification of the soul, a process of inner transformation that mirrored the spiritual ascent toward enlightenment. For the Templars, alchemy was not merely a practice of material transformation, but a means to understand the deeper, spiritual truths of the universe. The use of alchemical symbols, such as the philosopher's stone and the transmutation of lead into gold, was thought to represent the refinement of the soul and the attainment of divine wisdom. In addition to sacred geometry and alchemy, the Templars were also influenced by the ancient practice of Kabbalah, the mystical teachings of Judaism. Kabbalah offers a complex system of esoteric knowledge that is based on the belief that there is a hidden, divine code underlying the universe. This hidden code can be deciphered through symbols, letters, and numbers, and it offers profound insights into the nature of reality and the human soul. Many of the Templars' symbols, such as the cross and the hexagram, are thought to have Kabbalistic significance. It is believed that the Templars used these symbols to encode hidden messages and spiritual teachings that were not immediately apparent to outsiders. Some theorists even argue that the Templars' connection to Kabbalah allowed them to access a deeper understanding of the divine mysteries, one that was not bound by the orthodox doctrines of the Catholic Church. Another essential component of Templar mysticism was their connection to the ancient mystery schools, which are centers of esoteric knowledge that existed long before the rise of Christianity. These mystery schools, which were active in Egypt, Greece, and other parts of the Mediterranean world, were dedicated to the pursuit of hidden knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. The teachings of these schools often involved rituals, symbols, and practices that were meant to elevate the soul and bring the initiate closer to the divine. The Templars, in their search for hidden knowledge, were thought to have been influenced by these ancient schools, incorporating their symbols, rituals, and teachings into their own practices. It is possible that the Templars' deep connection to the mysteries of the ancient world led them to uncover truths that had been long forgotten, and that these truths formed the basis of the esoteric wisdom they sought to protect. The Templars were also associated with the Knights of St. John and the Hospitallers, other religious military orders that shared some of the same mystical practices. Like the Templars, these orders were involved in the protection of Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land, but they also sought to preserve and protect ancient knowledge and esoteric wisdom. The Hospitallers, for example, were deeply connected to the mystical traditions of the East, particularly the ancient knowledge of alchemy, astrology, and sacred geometry. It is believed that the Templars, in their travels and missions throughout the Holy Land, came into contact with these mystical traditions and adopted many of their practices, rituals, and symbols. This interconnection between the Templars and other mystical orders contributed to the development of a rich, esoteric tradition that was centered around hidden knowledge, sacred rituals, and divine wisdom. The Templars' commitment to secrecy was not merely a matter of protecting their material wealth and power. It was also an expression of their dedication to preserving esoteric knowledge that they believed was too powerful to be exposed to the public. They understood that such knowledge had the potential to transform society, but they also recognized that it could be dangerous in the wrong hands. The secrecy surrounding their rituals, symbols, and beliefs was not born out of paranoia, but from a deep reverence for the sacred nature of their work. To the Templars, the pursuit of hidden knowledge was a spiritual journey, one that required discipline, integrity, and a willingness to protect the divine wisdom that had been entrusted to them. This hidden mysticism is often overshadowed by the more familiar stories of Templar wealth, power, and military conquest. However, it is clear that the Templars were not just warriors. They were mystics and seekers of hidden truths. The secrets they guarded, whether related to sacred geometry, alchemy, Kabbalah, or ancient mystery schools, were central to their identity and their mission. These mystical teachings were not just for the male knights. They may have been shared with, or even preserved by, women within the order. The Templar daughters, if they existed, could have played a key role in safeguarding these mystical traditions, ensuring that the sacred knowledge of the Templars was passed down through generations. As we look deeper into the hidden mysticism of the Templars, we find that their true legacy may not lie in their military victories or their wealth, but in the spiritual and esoteric wisdom they sought to uncover and protect. The Templars' commitment to this hidden knowledge suggests that they were not just part of a historical order, but part of a larger, ancient tradition that spanned cultures, religions, and centuries. The secrets they guarded were not meant for the masses, but for those who were willing to look beyond the surface of history and seek the deeper truths that lie beneath. The story of a Knights Templar is not just one of military conquest, wealth, and religious devotion. It is also a story of secrecy, hidden knowledge, and the deliberate suppression of truths that have the potential to alter our understanding of history. The rise and fall of the Templars is marked by a campaign of deliberate obscuration, a campaign that was set in motion long before their official disbandment by Pope Clement V in 1312, and which continues to this day in the form of speculative theories and conspiracy narratives. The suppression of Templar secrets is one of the most fascinating and enigmatic aspects of their legacy, and it is a tale that intertwines power, politics, religion, and the desire to control knowledge. The Knights Templar, established in the early 12th century, began as a humble military order dedicated to protecting Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. However, as the Templars grew in influence, wealth, and power, they quickly became more than just a military force. The order became a center of esoteric learning, a beacon of mystical knowledge that drew on ancient traditions and secretive practices. The Templars were linked to sacred relics, ancient mysteries, and hidden wisdom that was said to have been passed down through generations of mystics, philosophers, and scholars. But as their influence grew, so did the threat they posed to the established order. Their connection to the hidden mysteries, their refusal to disclose their most sacred rituals, and their growing autonomy made them a target for those in power. In the early 14th century, when King Philip IV of France sought to consolidate his power and recover his debts to the Templars, he began a campaign to destroy the order. On October 13, 1307, under orders from the king, thousands of Templars were arrested across France, tortured into confessing heresy, and executed in a highly public manner. The charges leveled against them, ranging from heresy to sodomy, idolatry, and blasphemy, were often based on fabricated evidence obtained under duress. The suppression of the Templars was not a matter of genuine religious or moral concern, but a political maneuver designed to weaken a powerful rival and seize their wealth and assets. King Philip's machinations, with the tacit approval of the papacy, led to the dissolution of the Templar Order in 1312, effectively ending the organization as a formal entity. Yet, despite the official disbandment of the Templars, their legacy did not vanish with them. The secrets they guarded, the mystical knowledge they possessed, and the sacred relics they protected continued to be a source of intrigue and speculation. Even as the Templar Knights were persecuted and their order officially suppressed, the question of what they knew, what they held, and why they were targeted remained unanswered. The suppression of Templar secrets was not simply about destroying the order. It was about preventing the dissemination of knowledge that could destabilize the established power structures. The Templars had become custodians of a truth that threatened to upend centuries of religious, political, and social authority. One of the most compelling theories about the Templars is that they were the keepers of a hidden history, an alternative history that the church and political elites sought to erase. The Templars were rumored to have uncovered the lost knowledge of ancient civilizations, knowledge that was said to be hidden in sacred texts, ancient artifacts, and even within the secret rituals of the order itself. It is widely speculated that the Templars were in possession of sacred relics, such as the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and other religious treasures that had the potential to challenge conventional Christian teachings. If the Templars held these relics, it would explain why they were so fiercely persecuted. They were the custodians of knowledge that threatened to expose the true origins of Christianity and its relationship to other ancient traditions. The idea that the Templars were in possession of the Holy Grail is one of the most enduring and intriguing aspects of their legacy. The Grail, in many versions of the legend, is not just a physical object, but a symbol of divine wisdom, spiritual enlightenment, and hidden knowledge. It is a vessel that contains the ultimate truth, one that can transform those who seek it. The Templars, with their deep connections to esoteric and mystical traditions, were seen by many as the guardians of this sacred artifact. It is thought that the Grail was not simply a relic, but a representation of a deeper, more profound understanding of the divine, an understanding that the Church was determined to suppress in order to maintain its grip on power. By controlling access to this knowledge, the Church could dictate the spiritual and intellectual direction of Europe. Any challenge to this control, whether through the Templars or another group, would have been viewed as a threat. Moreover, the Templars were known for their elaborate and secretive rituals. Their initiation ceremonies, their use of sacred symbols, and their cryptic language were all designed to conceal the deeper truths of their teachings. Some historians argue that these rituals were not merely religious ceremonies, but coded messages meant to preserve and protect ancient knowledge. The Templars' secretive nature made them a target for both the Church and the monarchy, as their actions were perceived as a challenge to the established order. The idea that the Templars' rituals concealed esoteric truths, potentially linked to ancient wisdom or the divine feminine, suggests that they were not just an order of knights, but a spiritual movement with a deep understanding of the mysteries of the universe. The suppression of Templar secrets was not limited to their destruction in the early 14th century. In fact, the suppression continued long after the order's official dissolution. The Vatican, for example, has been accused of deliberately hiding or destroying documents and records related to the Templars in an effort to erase their legacy and prevent the spread of their hidden teachings. The Church's refusal to address the full extent of the Templars' knowledge is seen by many as evidence of an ongoing attempt to control and restrict access to forbidden knowledge. The Templars' association with mystical practices, their potential possession of sacred relics, and their rejection of certain aspects of the Catholic Church's teachings made them an inconvenient truth for those in power. This suppression has contributed to the mystique and intrigue surrounding the Templars. The lack of concrete evidence and the destruction of key records have only fueled speculation about the true nature of the Templar Order. Some suggest that the Templars did not simply disappear, but went underground, continuing their work in secret societies and clandestine organizations. The Freemasons, for example, are often cited as a possible successor to the Templars, carrying on their traditions and rituals in a more covert manner. Others argue that the Templars' knowledge was passed down through various religious and mystical groups, preserved in secret locations and hidden from the public eye. The Templars' secrets were also suppressed in the form of disinformation. Throughout history, those who sought to uncover the truth about the order have been met with resistance, ridicule, or outright hostility. The myth of the Templars as heretics and their association with dark and sinister practices served to discredit any attempts to uncover their true legacy. By labeling the Templars as enemies of the Church, the authorities were able to cast doubt on any claims that the order had been involved in something more significant than its public image suggested. This disinformation campaign served to create a smokescreen around the Templars, making it difficult for future generations to separate fact from fiction. Despite the suppression of Templar secrets, there have been those who have continued to seek the truth. Over the centuries, scholars, historians, and even modern-day conspiracy theorists have searched for evidence of the Templars' hidden knowledge. The mysteries of the Grail, the true nature of their rituals, and the legacy of their esoteric teachings continue to captivate the imagination of those who believe that there is more to the Templar story than what has been told. The suppression of these secrets has only added to their allure, ensuring that the Knights Templar remain one of history's most enduring and enigmatic subjects. The Templars, with their hidden knowledge, sacred relics, and mystical traditions, were not just a military order. They were keepers of a profound secret. Their suppression was not just a political move to destroy their power. It was an attempt to erase a truth that challenged the very foundations of religious, political, and social authority. The legacy of the Templars, then, is not just one of destruction and persecution, but of the preservation of hidden knowledge that continues to shape the course of history to this day. The relationship between the Knights Templar and the concept of the sacred feminine is a deeply mysterious and often overlooked aspect of the Order's legacy. While the Templars are predominantly remembered for their military prowess, their role as guardians of sacred relics, and their ties to mystical traditions, there exists an enigmatic thread that connects the Order to a powerful and ancient feminine principle, a principle that is often suppressed, misunderstood, or ignored in conventional historical accounts. The idea of the sacred feminine within the context of the Templars is not only a matter of the Order's possible spiritual inclinations, but also relates to the presence of women in the Templar world, whether as initiates, spiritual guides, or protectors of hidden knowledge. The notion of the sacred feminine is one that has existed in many cultures and religions throughout history. In various traditions, the feminine is represented by a divine force that embodies wisdom, intuition, and creative power, offering an essential balance to the masculine. In Christianity, this is perhaps best symbolized by the Virgin Mary, who represents purity, motherhood, and divine grace. Yet, beyond the archetype of the mother and nurturer, the sacred feminine in its full form is far more expansive, encompassing knowledge, mystery, and spiritual enlightenment. It is within this broader understanding of the feminine that we begin to see the possible connections between the Templars and the lost knowledge of the sacred feminine. Many scholars and researchers believe that the Templars were drawn to the mysteries of the feminine divine, particularly through their connection to the Holy Grail. The Grail is often depicted as a vessel containing sacred knowledge, and in many versions of the legend, it is associated with feminine symbolism. In some accounts, the Grail is not merely a cup or a chalice, but a womb-like vessel that holds the potential for spiritual rebirth and transformation. The Templars' association with the Grail, therefore, could be seen as a connection to a deeper, more esoteric form of the feminine divine. In some interpretations of the Grail myth, the feminine is not only a part of the narrative, but its driving force, with the Grail being safeguarded by women or revealed through feminine channels of spiritual insight. The idea that the Templars were in possession of the Holy Grail has long been a subject of speculation. The most popularized version of this theory is that the Grail was hidden away by the Templars to protect it from the Church or from rival powers. However, there is another, lesser-known theory that suggests that the Grail's true significance was spiritual and symbolic, and that it was connected to a form of wisdom that could only be understood through an alignment with the sacred feminine. Some believe that the Templars did not just protect the Grail, but were custodians of its deeper, hidden meaning, a meaning that was tied to the divine feminine, and that, if revealed, could have altered the course of Christian history. The Templars' deep interest in the Grail, combined with their secretive nature, suggests that they were involved in a mystical tradition that sought to preserve the sacred knowledge of the feminine. This knowledge was often seen as dangerous or heretical by the powers of the time, which is perhaps why the Templars kept it hidden. In many esoteric traditions, the sacred feminine is associated with wisdom that is suppressed by patriarchal systems of control, making the Templars' possible connection to this wisdom all the more significant. It is said that women, particularly those in certain spiritual or mystical circles, have historically been the keepers of this feminine wisdom, serving as channels through which divine knowledge can be accessed. While most historical records focus on the Templar Knights, there are indications that women did play a role in the order, albeit in a more subtle and often unrecorded manner. There are accounts, though limited, that suggest that women were part of the Templar network, operating as allies, initiates, or even protectors of the Order's secrets. Some believe that the Templars were connected to certain secretive or heretical groups that venerated the feminine divine, such as the Cathars. The Cathars, who were active in the south of France in the 12th and 13th centuries, rejected many of the teachings of the Catholic Church and embraced a dualistic worldview that emphasized the balance between masculine and feminine principles. The Cathars' spiritual practices were centered around the idea of the divine spark within all beings, with women playing an important role in their religious rituals. It is thought by some researchers that the Templars may have been influenced by, or even in communication with the Cathars, particularly in their shared reverence for the sacred feminine. In addition to their potential connection to the Cathars, there are other theories that suggest that the Templars may have had women within their ranks who were tasked with guarding the order's mystical knowledge. These women, often referred to as Templar daughters, are believed by some to have played a significant role in the spiritual and ritualistic life of the order. While there is no concrete historical evidence to support this theory, it is consistent with the broader pattern of secret societies throughout history that have involved women in roles of spiritual guardianship and wisdom transmission. The concept of a Templar daughter is intriguing because it suggests that, just as the Knights were initiates in the order's mysteries, so too were women potentially involved in these same sacred rites, albeit in a more clandestine and veiled capacity. These women, whether as direct members of the order or as external allies, would have been the spiritual keepers of the feminine mysteries, guarding sacred knowledge that was passed down through generations. Their role, however, would have been deliberately obscured by the male-dominated narratives of history, both because of the patriarchal nature of medieval society and because of the Templars' need to protect their secrets. The fact that so little is known about these women, despite the many theories that surround their potential involvement, suggests that their presence was carefully concealed, even within the mystical and esoteric circles to which the Templars belonged. The question then arises, if women were indeed involved in the Templar order, what was their role in preserving the sacred feminine? One theory suggests that women may have been integral in the transmission of esoteric knowledge, particularly in the areas of alchemy, mysticism, and sacred geometry. These traditions, which were central to Templar practice, often involved deep spiritual insights that were believed to be accessible only to those who had a connection to the divine feminine. Women, as spiritual guides and initiates, may have been the ones who carried forward these teachings, ensuring that the sacred wisdom of the Templars was preserved and passed on to future generations. The Templars' interest in alchemy and the transformation of the soul is also significant in this context, as alchemical symbolism often involves feminine motifs, such as the transformation of base materials into gold, an allegory for spiritual purification and enlightenment. The concept of the sacred feminine within the Templars also ties into broader historical and cultural patterns. Across many cultures, women have been associated with the mysteries of life, death, and rebirth. In ancient Egypt, the goddess Isis was revered as a protector of knowledge and the mother of all wisdom, while in Celtic traditions, the goddess Brigid represented healing, poetry, and divine inspiration. These traditions, with their reverence for the feminine, likely influenced the Templars' own mystical beliefs and practices. It is possible that the Templars saw themselves as part of a long line of initiates who were tasked with protecting these ancient, feminine mysteries that have been suppressed by more orthodox religious systems. Ultimately, the connection between the Templars and the sacred feminine is one of the most intriguing and mysterious aspects of their legacy. Whether through their connection to the Grail, their association with mystical traditions, or their possible involvement with women in the order, the Templars' reverence for the feminine divine suggests that their true purpose went beyond simple military conquest. They were not just warriors. They were guardians of a deeper spiritual truth, one that transcended the patriarchal boundaries of their time and reached into the heart of the divine mysteries. The Knights Templar are often associated with vast wealth, military power, and mysterious rituals, but one of the most enduring aspects of their legacy lies in the rumored possession of sacred artifacts and hidden relics. These treasures, thought to be key to the Order's secretive knowledge and influence, have sparked centuries of speculation, intrigue, and exploration. From the Holy Grail to hidden manuscripts, the Templars' artifacts are shrouded in mystery, and their potential significance may be far greater than mere material wealth. These relics are not only symbols of the Templars' power, but are believed by some to be vessels of hidden wisdom, ancient knowledge, and spiritual enlightenment, truths that have been deliberately suppressed or concealed for centuries. Perhaps the most famous artifact associated with the Templars is the Holy Grail. In many versions of the Grail legend, the Grail is not simply a physical object, but a symbol of divine knowledge, spiritual truth, and inner transformation. The Templars, who were deeply connected to the mystical traditions of the Middle East and Europe, were rumored to be the guardians of the Grail, a sacred vessel that held the key to ultimate wisdom and enlightenment. According to some theories, the Grail was not just a cup or chalice, but a symbol of a deeper, more esoteric truth, a wisdom that was tied to the feminine divine and that had the potential to transform the very nature of Christianity. The Templars' association with the Grail is often linked to their time in the Holy Land, where they had access to ancient sites, religious relics, and sacred texts that were not available to most Europeans. It is believed that the Templars may have discovered hidden knowledge during their time in Jerusalem, knowledge that was tied to the ancient traditions of the Israelites, early Christianity, and even pre-Christian religions. The Grail, in this context, could be seen as a repository of this knowledge, a sacred object that contained the mysteries of the divine, hidden from the masses in order to preserve its power. Whether the Templars actually possessed the Grail or were simply its guardians, their connection to it remains one of the most enduring and captivating aspects of their mythos. Beyond the Grail, there are other relics and artifacts that are thought to be linked to the Templars, some of which have become the subject of intense speculation and mystery. One such artifact is the Ark of the Covenant, the legendary chest that is said to contain the tablets of the Ten Commandments. The Ark has long been a symbol of divine power, carrying the physical manifestation of God's covenant with the Israelites. Some theories suggest that the Templars may have discovered the Ark during their time in the Holy Land, possibly hidden within the ruins of Solomon's Temple, which they were rumored to have explored. If the Templars did possess the Ark, its significance would have been immense, as it was believed to contain not only the commandments, but also a powerful spiritual force that could confer divine favor or protection. The idea that the Templars could have held such a powerful artifact adds another layer of intrigue to their already mysterious reputation. Another artifact that is often linked to the Templars is the Sword of the Templars themselves. The iconic image of the Templar Knight, sword in hand, represents both martial prowess and spiritual duty. The Templar sword was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of their sacred mission. Some believe that certain Templar swords were imbued with spiritual power, linked to ancient rituals and mystical practices. These swords may have been passed down from generation to generation, each one containing a unique history and significance that was tied to the Templars' esoteric knowledge. Some historians and researchers suggest that these swords, particularly those carried by high-ranking Templars, were not just instruments of war, but were believed to have magical or mystical properties. They were symbols of divine justice and protection, and in the hands of a Templar Knight, they were thought to be capable of channeling spiritual power. In addition to these famous relics, there are other artifacts that may have played a crucial role in the Templars' rituals and spiritual practices. For example, there are numerous theories about the Templars' connection to sacred geometry and architectural knowledge. The Templars were renowned for their construction of impressive castles, churches, and fortifications, many of which were built with precise mathematical measurements and hidden symbols. Some believe that the Templars were not just skilled builders, but were also keepers of ancient architectural secrets that were passed down through sacred geometry. Certain objects, such as compasses, measuring tools, and even architectural blueprints, may have been integral to their mystical practices. These objects, though seemingly mundane, could have contained hidden messages or been used in rituals designed to unlock spiritual insight or divine wisdom. The Templars' connection to the knowledge of the ancient world is another important factor when considering their possible possession of sacred artifacts. Throughout history, many secret societies and mystical traditions have sought to preserve the wisdom of ancient civilizations, knowledge that was thought to have been lost or suppressed. The Templars, with their access to the Holy Land, were ideally positioned to uncover these lost truths. It is thought that they may have encountered ancient manuscripts, scrolls, or texts that contained profound spiritual knowledge, some of which could have been directly linked to the early Christian church or even to pre-Christian traditions. These texts could have included Gnostic writings, early biblical manuscripts, or even non-Christian religious works that contained hidden truths about the nature of God, the universe, and humanity's place within it. If the Templars did possess such documents, it would explain why they were targeted by the Church, who sought to suppress knowledge that contradicted its dogma. The mystery surrounding Templar artifacts is further compounded by the fact that many of these relics have never been found, or at least not confirmed to exist in any concrete way. Some believe that the Templars deliberately hid their most valuable treasures, possibly in secret locations known only to a select few. Over the centuries, many have speculated about the whereabouts of these hidden relics, with some suggesting that they were buried or concealed in locations such as Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, or various castles and churches across Europe. These locations, often associated with Templar activity, have been the subject of numerous expeditions, searches, and investigations, but the artifacts themselves have remained elusive, adding to the air of mystery that surrounds the order. The disappearance of these relics raises another interesting possibility. Could they still be hidden, waiting to be uncovered? The idea that the Templars' treasures are still out there, hidden in plain sight or carefully concealed, is a compelling one. Some researchers argue that the search for Templar artifacts is not just about uncovering material wealth, but about discovering lost knowledge. Knowledge that has been hidden for centuries and that may hold the key to unlocking greater spiritual or historical truths. In this context, the Templars' treasures become more than mere objects. They are symbols of the hidden wisdom that the Order sought to preserve and protect. Whether or not the Templars' artifacts and relics will ever be found is uncertain, but the mystery surrounding them continues to captivate the imagination. These relics represent more than just physical treasures. They're symbols of a deeper, more esoteric truth. They embody the secrets of the Templars, their connection to ancient knowledge, and their quest to preserve wisdom that transcended the conventional understanding of their time. The search for these relics is not just a historical pursuit. It is a quest to uncover hidden truths that have been deliberately obscured by those in power. In this sense, the Templars' artifacts are not just relics of the past, but keys to understanding a hidden history, a history that has been suppressed and obscured for centuries, but which continues to beckon to those who seek the truth. The legacy of the Knights Templar is shrouded in a dense web of mystery, secrecy, and intrigue that continues to captivate modern minds. While the Order itself was officially disbanded in the early 14th century, its influence never truly faded. Instead, it evolved into a vast array of conspiracy theories, secret societies, and esoteric traditions that continue to proliferate into the present day. The Templars' extraordinary rise and spectacular fall have left behind a legacy that is rich with symbolic meaning, shrouded in enigma, and intertwined with countless theories about hidden knowledge, spiritual power, and global influence. One of the key aspects of the Templar legacy is the way in which their story has been woven into the fabric of modern conspiracy theories. The Templars are often viewed not simply as a medieval military order, but as an ancient network of power brokers who secretly continue to shape world events. These theories typically suggest that the Templars did not merely fade into history, but instead went underground, evolving into secret societies that control or influence major world events from the shadows. The most prominent of these alleged successor organizations is the Freemasons, who are frequently said to have inherited the Templars' knowledge, rituals, and purpose. The Masonic Order, with its use of esoteric symbols and secretive practices, has long been linked to the Templars, and many conspiracy theorists believe that the Freemasons represent a direct continuation of the Templar Order's hidden agenda. In the eyes of some, the Freemasons and other secretive organizations, such as the Illuminati, are viewed as the modern inheritors of Templar ideals, using their influence to guide the course of history according to hidden, esoteric principles. These groups are often accused of orchestrating political events, shaping global economics, and maintaining control over world governments through a network of hidden power. The theories about the Freemasons and Templars go hand in hand, with claims that these organizations have carefully orchestrated world events, including the American Revolution, the formation of major global banks, and the development of secret treaties and agreements that affect global geopolitics. While many of these claims are speculative and largely unsupported by concrete evidence, they serve to perpetuate the idea that the Templars' legacy continues in the form of these clandestine organizations. This connection between the Templars and secret societies goes beyond just the Freemasons. Over the years, various other groups have been implicated in the modern-day continuation of Templar traditions. From the Rosicrucians to the Knights of Malta, from the Skull and Bone Society to the Bilderberg Group, the Templars are said to have left their mark on a multitude of secretive organizations that supposedly wield immense power behind the scenes. These groups, like the Templars before them, are often believed to be focused on maintaining the ancient knowledge that the Templars were said to have preserved, whether through occult rituals, cryptic symbols, or the pursuit of hidden wisdom. These modern organizations are often seen as part of a vast, interconnected network that traces its origins back to the Templar Knights. One of the most enduring elements of Templar conspiracy theories is their alleged possession of forbidden or lost knowledge that is believed to be too dangerous or transformative for the public to access. This hidden knowledge is often said to be linked to ancient spiritual teachings, the secrets of alchemy, sacred geometry, or even advanced technological innovations that were far ahead of their time. Many conspiracy theorists claim that the Templars were not just guardians of religious artifacts such as the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, but that they also had access to profound secrets that could potentially alter the course of human history. The idea that such knowledge has been deliberately concealed by powerful elites is a central theme in many modern Templar-related conspiracies. One of the most famous examples of this is the idea that the Templars were involved in the preservation of ancient, pre-Christian knowledge. It is often claimed that the Templars were initiated into a secret tradition that predated Christianity and that they were privy to ancient wisdom that had been passed down from the Egyptians, the Druids, or other ancient civilizations. This knowledge, according to conspiracy theorists, is hidden in plain sight, encoded in religious symbols, and protected by secret societies. Some theories posit that the Templars were the keepers of a lost history, one that could reveal the true origins of humanity, the true nature of the divine, or the secrets of creation itself. This hidden history, often viewed as a challenge to traditional Christian dogma, is said to have been suppressed by both the Church and other power structures in order to maintain control over the masses. Another prominent theory is the idea that the Templars were involved in the creation of the modern banking system. The order's vast wealth and extensive network of financial transactions during the medieval period have led many to speculate that the Templars were not merely a religious or military order, but also a powerful financial institution. Some conspiracy theorists argue that the Templars were the forerunners of modern banks, using their network of contacts and wealth to establish financial systems that are still in place today. These claims often link the Templars' disbandment to the rise of modern banking families, such as the Rothschilds, who are frequently accused of maintaining an invisible hand over global finance. Whether or not the Templars directly influenced the creation of modern banking systems, their wealth and financial operations certainly played a role in fueling the legends surrounding them. The notion that the Templars were not only involved in banking, but also in the development of secret technologies or hidden sciences is another aspect of the conspiracy theories. Some claim that the Templars were in possession of advanced knowledge, perhaps linked to alchemy, astronomy, or even early forms of engineering, that was far ahead of its time. This knowledge, often said to be based on sacred geometry or mystical teachings, was supposedly kept hidden from the public and preserved by the order for its own use. According to some theories, the Templars may have been involved in the construction of some of the most impressive architectural structures of the medieval world, including the famous cathedrals of Europe, which are believed to incorporate sacred mathematical principles and hidden symbolism. These structures, in turn, are often viewed as part of the Templars' secret agenda to pass on their esoteric knowledge to future generations. As the centuries have passed, the Templars' role in these conspiracies has evolved. In modern times, the Templars have become icons of alternative history and occultism, often featured in popular culture, literature, and films. From Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code to the Indiana Jones franchise, the Templars have become synonymous with hidden truths and ancient secrets, creating a fascinating blend of fact and fiction. The public's fascination with the Templars is fed by the mysteries that surround them: their sudden disappearance, their supposed connection to religious relics, and the idea that they were protectors of forbidden knowledge. At the same time, there are those who argue that these conspiracy theories are little more than modern myths, rooted in the human desire for mystery and intrigue. These theories, while entertaining, often lack solid historical evidence and are sometimes based on conjecture, sensationalism, or the misinterpretation of ancient texts. Scholars and historians who study the Templars typically emphasize the more mundane aspects of their history: their role as soldiers and bankers, their service to the Church, and their eventual persecution by King Philip IV of France. From this perspective, the Templars' true legacy lies not in their involvement in grand conspiracies, but in their real historical role in the medieval world. Despite this, the power of Templar conspiracy theories remains strong. Whether or not the Templars were involved in secret global affairs, hidden knowledge, or advanced technologies, the idea that they were keepers of profound mysteries continues to fascinate people across the world. Their story is one of power, secrecy, and spiritual exploration, a narrative that resonates with those who seek to uncover hidden truths, challenge the established order, and reveal the deep mysteries of the past. For many, the Templars' legacy is not simply a relic of history, but an ongoing enigma that invites exploration, speculation, and a sense of wonder that continues to captivate the imagination. The relationship between the Knights Templar and the Catholic Church is one of the most complex and contentious aspects of the order's history. What began as a group of devout knights sworn to protect Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land gradually transformed into a powerful and wealthy institution that would come to challenge the very foundations of the medieval Church. Over time, the Templars became embroiled in a struggle with the Church, one that ultimately led to their destruction. Accusations of heresy, corruption, and blasphemy were levied against the Templars by both the papacy and secular authorities, but the true nature of these charges remains shrouded in mystery. The conflict between the Templars and the Church raises profound questions about religious power, the control of knowledge, and the dynamics between spiritual and secular authority. The Knights Templar were founded in the early 12th century with the mission of protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. Initially, the order's role was in line with the Church's teachings, and the Templars enjoyed the support and approval of the papacy. The order was granted special privileges, such as exemption from local laws, direct oversight from the Pope, and the ability to build churches and fortresses throughout Europe and the Holy Land. This autonomy allowed the Templars to flourish, amassing great wealth, land, and political influence. In fact, by the 13th century, the Templars had become one of the wealthiest and most powerful institutions in Europe, with a network that spanned from the Holy Land to the farthest reaches of Christendom. However, as the Templars grew in power, so too did their tensions with the Catholic Church. At the heart of this conflict was the growing independence of the order and its increasing wealth. The Templars controlled vast estates, operated banking systems, and even had their own armed forces, which made them an increasingly formidable force. This rise in influence naturally led to concerns among both secular rulers and religious authorities, particularly the papacy. The Church, which held considerable sway over European monarchs, began to see the Templars not only as a military order, but as a rival institution with a level of autonomy that threatened the traditional hierarchical structure of the Church. In the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the Crusades had largely failed to achieve their religious objectives, and the Templars' military importance began to diminish. At the same time, the financial empire they had built through banking and land ownership was becoming increasingly powerful. This wealth and independence, which once earned the Templars the favor of the papacy, began to make them targets of envy and suspicion. The Pope's power was under threat, not just from rival kings and rulers, but also from within his own ranks. The Templars' autonomy, their lack of direct oversight by the Church, and their growing wealth made them a tempting target for secular and religious leaders who saw in them a challenge to their authority. The breaking point came in 1307, when King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the Templars and desperate to increase his own power, orchestrated the downfall of the order. On October 13, 1307, under the orders of King Philip, the Templars were arrested across France, charged with heresy, sodomy, blasphemy, and other grave crimes. The knights were tortured, forced to confess to these charges under duress, and publicly executed. Although Pope Clement V initially hesitated, he eventually bowed to the pressure from King Philip and authorized the formal dissolution of the order in 1312. The Templars were officially disbanded, their assets seized, and their members either imprisoned or executed. The charges against the Templars, especially the accusations of heresy, remain a subject of intense debate. Many historians believe that the charges were fabricated or exaggerated in order to justify the seizure of the Templars' wealth and power. The most infamous accusation was that the Templars had engaged in secret, blasphemous rituals, including the worship of an idol known as Baphomet. According to the confessions extracted under torture, the Templars were said to have participated in pagan rites and had renounced Christ in favor of this mysterious idol. However, there is little evidence to support these claims, and many scholars argue that they were the product of forced confessions designed to discredit the order. The Templars were also accused of engaging in sodomy and other forms of sexual perversion, which further tarnished their reputation in the eyes of both the Church and the public. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, these charges were widely believed at the time, and they were instrumental in the Templars' fall from grace. The fact that the Templars were accused of heresy by the Church, the very institution they had once served, is a testament to the political and religious tensions that underpinned the order's downfall. The Templars' mysterious practices, their secretive rituals, and their refusal to divulge their innermost beliefs made them a prime target for the Church's censure. It is worth noting that the Templars were not the only group to face charges of heresy during this period. The Cathars, the Waldensians, and other heretical movements were also persecuted by the Church, as they threatened the religious orthodoxy and control that the papacy sought to maintain. However, the question remains, were the Templars truly heretics, or were they simply the victims of a political and religious conspiracy? Some modern scholars argue that the Templars were unfairly persecuted because they represented a challenge to the power structures of both the Church and the monarchy. The wealth and influence of the order, combined with their secretive nature, made them a convenient target for those who wished to consolidate power and suppress any potential threats. The accusations of heresy, then, may have been a pretext for the larger goal of eliminating the Templars as a rival force. The Templars' supposed heresy also raises deeper philosophical and theological questions. If the Templars were indeed accused of heresy, what was the nature of the knowledge or beliefs they were said to possess? Was it a form of secret or forbidden knowledge that went against the teachings of the Church? Or was it simply a different interpretation of Christian doctrine that the Church deemed unacceptable? Some theories suggest that the Templars were privy to Gnostic teachings, which emphasized personal, direct communion with the divine rather than adherence to dogmatic religious doctrines. This kind of knowledge, often seen as heretical by the Church, may have been one of the main reasons the Templars were targeted. The legacy of the Templars' conflict with the Church has had a lasting impact on both historical and modern views of the order. For centuries, the Templars have been seen as martyrs, persecuted for their beliefs and their refusal to submit to the authority of the Church. Their supposed heresy has become a central theme in the mythology surrounding their story, with many modern theorists suggesting that the Templars' true teachings were suppressed because they represented a different understanding of Christianity, one that challenged the established order and power structures. This idea of the Templars as heretics or keepers of forbidden knowledge has contributed to their status as icons of mystery and rebellion. In the centuries following their disbandment, the Templars have been embraced by various groups who see them as a symbol of resistance to oppression. Freemasons, esotericists, and other secret societies have often drawn inspiration from the Templars, viewing them as guardians of hidden truths that were unjustly persecuted by the Church. For these groups, the Templars' struggle against the Church is symbolic of a larger fight against authoritarianism, dogma, and the suppression of knowledge. The Templars, in this light, are seen not as villains, but as victims, martyrs who were sacrificed in the name of power and control. The Templars' relationship with the Church remains a complex and deeply controversial topic. While the official history of the Templars is largely shaped by the narrative crafted by the Church and the monarchy, alternative theories about the true nature of the order continue to persist. Whether the Templars were truly heretics or simply the victims of a political conspiracy, their story remains a testament to the powerful forces of religion, power, and secrecy that shaped medieval Europe. The Templars, as both knights and heretics, embody the struggle for knowledge and freedom in a time when such things were not easily won. The history of the Knights Templar cannot be understood in isolation. Their role in the shaping of both medieval Europe and the Crusades was central to the trajectory of Western history. The Templars were not simply soldiers or religious zealots. They were key political and military players in one of the most tumultuous and transformative periods of the Middle Ages. Their influence reached beyond the battlefield, impacting the structures of power, the rise of banking systems, and the deepening of religious divisions that would resonate for centuries to come. The Crusades, in particular, played a defining role in the formation of the Templar Order, and in return, the Templars had a profound influence on the success, failure, and legacy of the Crusades. The origins of the Templars are deeply intertwined with the Crusades, a series of military campaigns initiated by the Catholic Church with the goal of reclaiming Jerusalem from Muslim control. The First Crusade, which began in 1096, was a call to arms for Christian knights and soldiers to march to the Holy Land and free the city from the infidels. The Crusades were driven by a mix of religious fervor, territorial expansion, and the promise of indulgences and eternal salvation for those who took part. It was within this religious and militaristic climate that the Knights Templar emerged. Founded in 1119 by a group of French knights led by Hugues de Payens, the Templars were originally tasked with protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. The Holy Land was fraught with danger, as both Muslims and local brigands targeted Christian pilgrims on their way to the sacred city. The Templars were founded as a military order to defend these travelers, ensuring their safe passage to and from Jerusalem. This mission, however, quickly expanded as the Templars became involved in the broader struggle for control of Jerusalem and its surrounding territories. The Templars' role in the Crusades went far beyond mere protection. As the Crusader states in the Holy Land began to solidify their hold on the region, the Templars quickly grew in both numbers and military prowess. They became one of the most formidable military orders of the time, their knights trained in the arts of warfare, mounted combat, and siege tactics. With their distinctive white mantles emblazoned with a red cross, they became a symbol of both martial valor and religious zeal. The Templars were heavily involved in many of the Crusader campaigns, particularly during the Second and Third Crusades. In the early years of the Crusader kingdoms, the Templars played a crucial role in defending key strategic locations, such as the fortress of Acre and the city of Jerusalem itself. They were instrumental in repelling Muslim forces, securing the Crusader states, and ensuring the survival of Christianity in the Holy Land. Their fortifications and castles dotted the landscape of the Levant, creating a network of strongholds that allowed the Crusaders to maintain a foothold in the region for nearly 2 centuries. Beyond their military exploits, the Templars also played a key role in the religious and political dynamics of the Crusades. As the order grew in wealth and influence, they became not just soldiers, but also significant political players. The Templars were granted considerable autonomy by the Pope, who saw the order as a powerful ally in the struggle for control of the Holy Land. This autonomy allowed the Templars to amass great wealth, which they used to fund their military campaigns and support their religious activities. They built magnificent castles and churches across Europe and the Holy Land, and their financial network became one of the most sophisticated of the medieval world. The Templars also played a significant role in the development of early European banking. Their widespread network of castles, estates, and properties across Christendom allowed them to facilitate safe transactions and loans for pilgrims, merchants, and nobles. In many ways, the Templars were the forerunners of modern banking, as they created a system of financial transactions that was based on trust and secrecy. Pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land could deposit money with the Templars in one location and withdraw it at another, a revolutionary concept in the medieval world. This financial system allowed the Templars to fund their military operations and expand their influence, but also made them an increasingly important player in European politics and economics. The Templars' growing power, however, eventually became a source of tension and conflict, not just with their Muslim enemies, but with the Catholic Church and European monarchs. While the order had enjoyed the favor of the Church for much of its existence, their increasing wealth and independence began to create friction with both secular rulers and religious authorities. As the Templars became more entrenched in the financial and political landscapes of Europe, their autonomy began to draw the suspicion of kings and popes alike. The Church, which had once supported the Templars' efforts in the Holy Land, began to see them as a potential rival, while European monarchs, particularly King Philip IV of France, grew envious of their wealth and sought to bring the order under their control. The turning point in the Templars' relationship with the Church came in the early 14th century, when the Crusades began to falter. The loss of Jerusalem to Muslim forces in 1187, followed by the eventual collapse of the Crusader states, marked the beginning of the end for the Templar order. The Templars' military and religious purpose was called into question as the Crusades turned from a religiously motivated campaign into a series of failed military ventures. The Templars' continued existence was increasingly seen as unnecessary, and their wealth and influence became a liability for the papacy and secular rulers alike. In 1307, King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the Templars and seeking to consolidate his power, launched a brutal campaign to destroy the order. On October 13th of that year, hundreds of Templar knights were arrested, tortured, and forced to confess to charges of heresy, blasphemy, and other crimes. The charges, many of which were likely fabricated or exaggerated, were used as a pretext for the dissolution of the order. In 1312, Pope Clement V, under pressure from King Philip, officially disbanded the Templars, and many of their assets were seized by the crown. The Templars' last strongholds in the Holy Land in Europe were lost, and the order was effectively erased from history. Despite their dramatic fall from grace, the Templars' legacy continued to shape the course of European history. Their military exploits, their role in the Crusades, and their complex relationship with the Church and secular rulers made them one of the most fascinating and controversial organizations of the medieval period. The Templars' contributions to the development of banking, their influence in the politics of Europe, and their role in shaping the course of the Crusades left a lasting imprint on the Western world. The mystery surrounding their rise and fall, as well as the legends that grew up around their activities, ensured that the Templars would remain a subject of fascination for centuries to come. In the centuries following their dissolution, the Templars became the subject of countless myths and conspiracy theories, with many claiming that the order had secretly survived and continued to exert influence behind the scenes. These theories, while largely unfounded, reflect the enduring power of the Templars' legacy and the profound impact they had on the medieval world. The Templars' role in the Crusades, their political and financial influence, and their eventual downfall continue to inspire fascination and speculation to this day. One of the most intriguing and enigmatic aspects of the Knights Templars' legacy is their purported connection to the sacred feminine. Throughout history, the concept of the sacred feminine has existed as a counterbalance to the dominant masculine narrative of religious and spiritual authority. While the majority of religious traditions have placed men at the forefront of spiritual and leadership roles, the sacred feminine represents a hidden, often suppressed aspect of divine wisdom and power. This concept is not merely about femininity in a biological sense. It encompasses the divine feminine energy that is said to reside in all people, regardless of gender. The Knights Templar, through their mystical practices, their relationship to ancient traditions, and their secretive nature, are often believed to have maintained a deep and abiding connection to this spiritual force. The Templars' supposed connection to the sacred feminine is often linked to their alleged custodianship of the Holy Grail. While the Grail is traditionally seen as a symbol of divine wisdom and salvation, many alternative historians and esoteric scholars argue that it is also a representation of the feminine divine. In these interpretations, the Holy Grail is not merely a cup or chalice, but a sacred vessel that symbolizes the feminine aspect of the divine, one that has been marginalized or hidden by patriarchal religious institutions. The Templars, with their deep knowledge of ancient religious traditions, are thought to have understood this esoteric meaning of the Grail and were possibly even its guardians, entrusted with preserving the knowledge of the sacred feminine and keeping it hidden from mainstream Christianity. The idea that the Templars were custodians of the sacred feminine is closely tied to their connection to Gnosticism and other ancient spiritual traditions that revered the feminine aspect of God. Gnosticism, an early Christian movement that emphasized personal spiritual knowledge over institutional doctrine, often portrayed the divine as both masculine and feminine. In Gnostic texts, the feminine principle is often represented by Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, who is considered the embodiment of divine insight and understanding. In these teachings, the feminine is seen as a source of knowledge and power, capable of guiding the soul toward enlightenment and salvation. Some scholars argue that the Templars, through their access to ancient texts in their time in the Holy Land, may have encountered Gnostic teachings that emphasize the importance of the sacred feminine. They may have even adopted these teachings into their own rituals and beliefs, incorporating them into their understanding of the divine and the spiritual path. Furthermore, the Templars' connection to the sacred feminine can be seen through their association with Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene has long been a controversial figure in Christian history. Traditionally depicted as a prostitute or sinner, she has been increasingly recognized in modern scholarship as a powerful figure in early Christianity, possibly even the partner or wife of Jesus Christ. In some alternative theories, Mary Magdalene is seen not just as a follower of Christ, but as the embodiment of the sacred feminine itself. These interpretations suggest that Mary Magdalene held a special, possibly secret role in the early Christian movement, one that was suppressed by the patriarchal church. The Templars, with their supposed knowledge of hidden Christian teachings, are often linked to these alternative views of Mary Magdalene. Some theories suggest that the Templars were not just aware of her true significance, but were actively engaged in preserving her legacy as a key figure of divine feminine wisdom. This connection between the Templars and the sacred feminine is also reflected in the architecture and symbols they left behind. The Templars were renowned for their building projects, including castles, churches, and cathedrals, many of which incorporated esoteric symbols and geometries that some believe were tied to feminine energy.